Yeah, man, it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. It's no different.
Come on, it's got to be a little different.
That's what I said. Well, it's totally exactly the same. Yeah, right.
Well, that's why teams that instill good loyalty, like when Hines Ward left. He didn't go to another team. He just retired. And, you know, some teams have real loyalty.
It's because the Steelers are like a cult.
Yeah, that's true.
They convince people to play for less than they're worth.
Yeah.
Would you say I should go get my terrible towel? I can't, my audio's a little off.
You guys reminded me of that Jerry Seinfeld bit. Not sure if you ever heard it, but he's like, you know what? We're all just cheering for laundry. That's all it is. We're cheering on which piece of laundry we like the best. I don't care who you are. As long as you got that shirt on. If you got the other shirt, I don't like your laundry.
That's so true. All right.
I got a whole closet of that laundry, so I'm right there with you, Jay.
Give me 1 second. We're almost there.
Jay, you're 100% sure about that. You're 100% on that color, man. It's popping. It's good. It was a good choice.
Me?
Yeah, you're right.
Thanks, Carlos.
It's salmon.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one too, Nicole.
Oh gosh, so much pressure. Reply all. Here is the correct link. Sorry. All right, let me just send that out into the interwebs. It's funny when people message you saying the link's not working when you know the link's not working. It definitely helps. All right.
All it does is just say your name right now, Jay. Oh, we're good. Yeah, just check. We're ready to roll. All right, then. Let's get started. Meet and confer. I believe today is May 7th, correct? Yes. All right. So today, before we do introductions, we're going to switch it up a little and just do a couple shout outs. First one, I would like to give a shout out to Joseph Fuentes, who just completed his second master's, and this one's in educational administration. Educational administration. Love to see educators continuing to grow in their profession and continuing to grow with their schools. We're all very proud of Joseph in completing that. So shout out to Joseph for that. And Mr. Barbuda?
Yeah, congrats, Joe. And we just wanted to give one more, like a parting goodbye to our president, Leanne Abushar, who's currently somewhere in the middle of Michigan, storming the cap. No, I'm just kidding. She's in Michigan with her family, Jacob, her husband, and her kid, Jonah. They just had a baby. And I could go on and on about how awesome of a leader Leanne was. And if it wasn't for her, a lot of these PECTA moments wouldn't be going on, and the solidarity between the district and PECTA. And it's kind of funny because it all started just one random day at AEA where we were standing next to each other and we didn't even know that we were both in the same district, and kind of started the PECTA revival, I guess you could say. And, you know, Leanne is going to be sorely missed, and I'll miss her leadership, but mostly I'll miss her as a friend. So, yeah. oh my God, Leanne made me emotional. But yeah, no, we're gonna miss her a lot because she did a lot of great things, and she continues to be a great person no matter where she is. So thanks, Leanne.
Jay and Aaron, I know you guys will definitely take off right where she left it. We have some great leadership moving forward. So, all right, so let's get on with introductions. Chico Robinson, 7th and 8th Social Studies teacher and Vice President of PECTA. Elect.
Jay Barbuto, President-elect PECTA, 7-8 Language Arts at Edison.
Julie Robbins, social worker at Garfield.
Nicole Goodwin, first grade teacher at Whittier and PECTA treasurer.
Marnie Burris, third grade teacher at Lowell.
Dana Ramos, IEIS at Emerson.
Feels like that awkward silence is my turn. I'm Anthony, principal at Kenilworth.
Vic Diaz, Director of Human Resources.
Dirk
Hello,
Olmsted,
Shelman
Principal,
Brown.
Capital School.
Sorry, Dirk, I talked over you. You have to do it again.
Dirk Olmsted, Capital, Principal, Capital School.
And Shelman Brown, Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
And Zephy Magana, principal at Heard.
All right, so I'm going to quickly run down what the agenda is for today. We have a lot on our plate, so we should probably dive right in. Number one, what we're going to deal with is an update on a possible counter proposal from Dr. Diaz. Number two, we'll be dealing with proposition number 3, which is salary schedule, and Marnie will be speaking on to that. Number 3 will be proposition 4, caseload sizes. That will be Nicole. Prop 5 will be welcome back. That'll be Dana. And Prop 8 CTMs, Jay. So let's go ahead and dive right into number 1, the update on a possible counter proposal for Dr. Diaz.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Yeah, I'll be speaking on behalf of administration as I inform you of administration's counter proposal regarding a salary increase. As I do that, I just want to start by saying thank you for 2 things. 1, everybody's patience. I know that this has been a long time coming. But 2, also engaging us over the past couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, I shared budget information and said the administration was putting itself in a position to really listen to people's thoughts and people's feelings as it pertains to our budget and just this time in our world and in our community. As we listened to that, we really started to hear 2 dominant interests that we are going to seek to balance with this proposal. What we're seeking to do is to really balance the interest that we've heard this in this forum, which is that our staff is doing a great job, an outstanding amount of effort, wonderful impact, especially at this time, and that work certainly warrants an increase in compensation. At the same time, we've heard other interests that sort of are suggesting to us that the most important thing isn't necessarily an increase in compensation, but an increase in assurance that folks are going to be safe from layoffs, safe from reductions in force, and safe from furloughs. All things that we're seeing in the broader world and that we have experienced in the past as a school district. The last time the state found itself in a recession. So all that being said, us listening, it's kind of funny because it sounds like it should be easy because this should be open and shut. The governor has promised 20 by 2020 and a 5% increase for all teachers. But unfortunately, it's not that simple. As we all know, the 20 by 2020 plan does not add up to a 20% raise for all certified staff. A 1% raise for all certified staff would be about $235,000. Our predicted revenue for next year from 20 by 2020 is only $472,000, not nearly enough for a 5% raise just for certified staff. The reason for that is twofold. One, that 5% increase does not take into consideration the previous 5 and the 10% from the year before. In other words, it doesn't compound in the eyes of the plan, although it compounds in everybody's salaries. The second 20 by 20 plan is based on per pupil funding. Our district is experiencing a double-digit percentage decrease in students every year. So as the decrease in students is happening, it is not matching the increase in funding. And I shared that with the budget graphic I shared a couple weeks ago. This of 20 by 2020 has been well documented. It's already been experienced. There's already districts who have said, we can't offer the first 10%, let alone the next 5%, and certainly now the last 5%. And if anybody would like, I've collected a series of news articles that came out shortly after the proposal was agreed to that already started to indicate that the money does not add up. This does not equal a 20% raise. At the same time, though, I'm very happy Phoenix #1 has shown and will continue to show a commitment to offering competitive salaries. Right now, Phoenix elementary educators are on average the highest paid public elementary school teachers in Maricopa County. And with the proposal we'll share, we believe that they will continue to be the highest paid public elementary school teachers in Maricopa County. This will be the third year in a row that we've seen an increase in salary. Last year, we saw teachers raised by 5%, others certified by 5%, support staff by 6%, administrators by 5%. The year prior, teachers and others certified by 10%, support staff by 5%, administrators by 5%. And that commitment to compensation isn't exclusive to teachers or to certified. One of the things I'm very proud of is that our district rose minimum wage positions to $12 an hour before the state mandated us to do so because we knew it was the right thing to do. We also still believe that we're the only school district in Arizona that provides free PPO medical and free PPO dental insurance to all of our employees. That's significant for us to say because at the same time that we're seeing this commitment to compensation and raises in compensation, we're experiencing budget difficulties in two forms. We are seeing that there is a decrease in our revenue and that there's an increase in our expenditures. The decrease in our revenue, it comes from declining enrollment. The more students we lose, that is the primary place where we draw in funding. Now that declining enrollment has already significantly and adversely impacted our budget, but the looming recession from COVID-19 threatens to do even more significant damage to that budget. This year, we've already experienced a loss of 370 students. We're building an M&O budget that would give us the flexibility to lose as many as 500 students. Now, 500 may seem very extreme, but if you look at early attendance figures in our distant learning, if you look at increased instability in affordable housing and increased instability in employment opportunities in the downtown area, all of this suggests that we're in for an even larger drop in student enrollment in 2020-21 than we have been in 19 and 20. At the same time that we're seeing those decreases, we are having to right-size our budget through things like performance-based budgeting. And this year, the Performance-Based Budget Committee reduced our overall M&O budget by $2.1 million. I've shared that a couple times. I've tried to look at it a little more deeply because sometimes we just say 2.1 and it's just a number, but there's some very real pain in that. That $2.1 million makes up 27 positions across the school district. Positions at schools, positions in work sites, positions on all work teams. Everybody will feel the brunt of that $2 million cut. We also learned early in the meet and confer process that ADE has informed us we are not going to receive additional funding in the form of indirect costs. And over the past couple of weeks, we've learned that the Prop 301 budget will be hit significantly as sales tax dwindles across the state. And the JLBC has predicted a $1.1 billion shortfall in the state budget as a result of the economic impact of COVID-19. Right before this meeting, I heard that the legislature is planning to meet tomorrow to close session. That's good news for this year's budget, but it creates even more of a threat that next year we can see some very real cuts to K-12 education in the state budget. In the midst of all that, though, I am happy that we do have a proposal that includes a salary increase. And the reason we have that goes back to the PBB. Through performance-based budgeting, we were able to cut that $2.1 million. We've already started to spend some of that savings on some increased costs. I've shared that our insurance went up by $150,000. The governing board mandated an increase to special area staffing. That's another $150K. Increase in minimum wage is going to be a $50,000 expenditure. ASRS is going up. That's going to be $50,000. A new expenditure we've learned of is that we are anticipating about $150,000 of additional expenditures related to providing meals to our community during COVID-19 closures. And that has to do with our inability to to bill for some of those meals. And so all that together dwindles down that $2.1 million pot of money. So with all of that being said, trying to balance those interests, trying to continue to offer that competitive compensation, but at the same time, really starting to make sure that we're going to weather the storm of an oncoming decrease in student enrollment and oncoming recession. Administration is recommending a 2% raise in base salaries for all staff, with the exception of those earning minimum wage, who will receive an increase based on state statutes. With that 2% increase in base salaries, we believe we will continue to see that our average teacher salary will be the highest in Maricopa County. And we're very excited that when we add classroom site funding to that 2% raise, our beginning teacher salary for the first time will be over $40,000. And that's something we've been wanting to do for some time. So I know I just gave you quite a bit of information, but I'd be happy to take any questions that you have as it pertains to the proposal or any of the other topics that I addressed.
Yeah, so Vic, I have a clarifying question. Thank you for breaking that down, by the way. Clarifying question, you mentioned the classroom site fund. We talked about how we would like that to be $1,500. Is that still going to be the case?
We received preliminary input or projections of how funds 11, 12, and 13 will be impacted. We haven't met yet to discuss those. I believe that we will still be able to be at $1,500 for the classroom site fund. As soon as that may change, you'll certainly be the first ones to know. But we are anticipating being able to stay at the $1,500 for next year. Again, the cuts in these budgets are so annual, especially with the collection of sales tax, that $1,500 might have to be shored up by other parts of the Prop 301 buckets. And so I think in our next meeting, we're going to have a chance to share that information much more robustly. I know that shortly before this meeting, ASBO announced a workshop, I believe for next week, to start to create budget projections based on what we're seeing in the 301.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can I ask a clarifying question about, you said a 2% raise for all staff, that's from superintendent on down?
You know, I'm not sure about the superintendent. The superintendent negotiates their contract directly with the governing board. And so I would have to get you an answer on that, but it would be for all other staff, with the exception of our minimum wage employees, whose compensation increase will be based on state statute.
Vic, do you have the breakdown of what 2% would cost for each wing of, is it the same, are you using the same numbers that we were using before? You're on mute.
There it is, yeah. Sorry, my mouse disappeared there for a moment. Yes, I'm using the same numbers. We are projecting the cost of a 2% raise for all staff to be $861,370. I know I'm also using a lot of numbers right now, and I will make sure after this meeting to email you all these specific numbers.
Dr. Diaz, thank you so much for providing us a counter proposal. And we will definitely look at these numbers and talk about this more and talk to the people. But we are going to now move on to...
Chico, I'm sorry. Can I ask one more question before we move on? I'm sorry. You know I'm good for this, right? Vic, when we left last meeting, you said it was a possibility that that you would be willing to use some of the money that is carried forwarded from the indirect funds. Is that 2% raise using some of that, or it was a decision of the district to not use that money?
Great question. I think we still need to fine tune that a bit. That cost could be encumbered directly from M&O and still leave some of that wiggle room in the M&O budget to account for that decrease in students that we spoke about. It is possible that we could use some of the indirect cost money as well, though, so that we're freeing up some of that more money in M&O. But we haven't got quite yet to what the distribution of that might be. I think probably most helpful for now is to know that it's more likely to be at an M&O than the indirect costs. And we'll continue to use that indirect costs as our savings, with the exception of the $1 million we already spend out of indirect costs related to other expenditures.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to say, thank you to everybody for the dialogue that's been going around. When this all started, there was no pandemic. And, to hear now, I just want the word safe. We've all been working. We've all been getting a lot of work done to help the kids. We've been still collecting a paycheck in our salary. And I'm so thankful every day that I can talk to Team Kenilworth and thank the district that we're in a position to keep doing that. Just to know that we have a job to come back to next year is just a breath of fresh air. And to have a safety plan that Vic's been laying out, to weather what we don't know is going to come out of this life after COVID. I don't know what to plan for. So to hear that we have a little bit of a cushion, a little bit of a plan in place for the what if, while we keep continuing to be safe, so we don't have to try to live in a world where I have to go knock on a teacher's door and explain that we're going to be cutting riffing positions. It's a breath of fresh air to know that we get to come back and with 2% on top of it. So I'm really happy I wasn't wearing socks for this meeting, because I think they would have been blown off of me to know that we have a safety plan in place and coming back to where people are on the unemployment line, we're offering 2% to come back on top of what we're already doing for our job. So I just wanted to voice that, and that's really amazing to me. So.
One more clarifying, they had asked about the 1,500 to teachers that's continuing from last year. Is that going to include all certified staff now this year as our proposal requests?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Julie. I apologize that I didn't speak to that earlier. The other part of the PECTA proposal was the increase of $1,500 for folks that don't receive classroom site fund dollars. At this time, administration is not recommending to move forward with that proposal. That proposal is, in my interpretation, sort of pace setting other certified staff with the teachers who do receive classroom site fund and other 301 monies. I know that comes up at other points in some of the proposals from PECTA. Given the uncertainty in the 301 budget, I don't think it's an appropriate time for us to do that level of pace setting. And just given the uncertainty of what we're seeing right now, we are trying to do what we're finding to be the most fiscally responsible. And we don't feel that it would be fiscally responsible for us to do that at this time. We are happy that those groups would continue to receive that 2% increase along with everybody else.
Any more questions on this? Okay, then we are gonna move to Proposition 3, salary schedule, and Marty.
Okay, so we looked through the language, and district had asked, or this committee had asked, to put a salary schedule, like, oh my gosh, I just had it, sorry, a salary schedule team together to kind of go over that for next year. So we were wondering if we could we get a date in our language for the final document that goes to the board? Like, when would that start, maybe?
I apologize, Mary, I'm not fully following. Are you referring to the date of when the committee would begin to meet?
Yes.
I would anticipate that this would start in the fall. I think that coming out of Meet and Confer, we will have a number of committees, just like we did last year. What we did last year is PECTA leadership basically told me these are the orders of priority for those committees. If I remember correctly, we said we wanted the 301 plan done first. So that committee started meeting right away. The class size committee started meeting right away, but we delayed the sick leave bank committee. And so coming out of this, I think we need to look at all the committees we have and then determine what would be the best, the best time to do that.
Okay. And then just a little follow-up piece here. We just wanted to make sure that that committee was formed and had something to bring back to PECTA before the next year's Meet and Confer started. So would that be possible?
I think so. What I'd like to do with that committee is to study salaries in education through a variety of different perspectives, not with any one preconceived notion that we are going to arrive at this solution, but a chance for us to prototype several different models, which could include a step schedule. As we go to do that, one of the things that makes Phoenix One just so unique is our teacher compensation, our principal compensation for that matter, most of our educator compensation is based on effectiveness and time. And that's rare. What you usually see is effectiveness or time. So you do see some of these cutting edge charter schools that have a lot of flexibility and don't have forums like this base teacher salary completely on effectiveness. Well, that goes up and down depending on post-test results, depending on the instability of only using quantitative data to measure student achievement. On the flip side, I've worked in plenty of districts that solely do it on time. It doesn't matter how good of a job you've done, as long as you've stayed here, you continue to earn a higher salary. The reason I believe that our teachers are the highest paid in the county is that we have been doing an effectiveness over time. It's not just based on being effective once or twice, it's doing it for a number of years and coming back and bringing that effectiveness back to the school every year. It's also not just focused on time. There's plenty of people who've been in the district that have been here for a number of years, but their salaries have been eclipsed by people with less experience, but much more robust results in what they've been able to achieve with students. And so I would want that committee to have an opportunity to really dig into those concepts of effectiveness and time and to look into a variety of different models of what a compensation structure could look like.
Okay, great.
May I ask a clarifying question related to that? So when we say that before this time next year, that the committee would have something to bring forward, are we saying something as far as a recommendation for or against adding a salary schedule, or are we saying that this would actually be what the model would look like moving forward? Like what's the thing we'd be committing to having ready by next year's meet and confer?
Just the model or whatever research comes from that committee, so that we can maybe create the language or try to figure out what the next steps would be.
Okay, so not necessarily a guaranteed here.
Yeah, no, not a guarantee at all, just kind of moving toward that potentially.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, Dr. Brown, thanks for clarifying that. So I'm understanding right with this committee. We had two different committees this year, I think, that are good comps. We had the sick leave bank committee. And the idea of the sick leave bank was we are going to make a sick leave bank. We have to come up with the ins and outs of that. And then we had the class size committee, which is we're going to monitor class size and then make recommendations. And those recommendations could have been any number of different things. It feels like what this committee is more like the class size committee, in the sense that we're going to study something and come up with recommendations, as opposed to the sick leave bank committee that says we're going to build the thing that we're defining in front of. So I want to make sure that I'm clear with that. My intention would be that it would be more like the class size committee. It's going to study, it's going to research, it's going to discuss and prototype and come up with recommendations.
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay. So I think in that regards, in terms of drafting up an agreement, we might find a template, so to speak, with the class size committee agreement from last year, where we might be able to borrow some of that language.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Can we commit to just maybe shoring up that language and maybe at our next meeting approving whatever that language is, so that we can get that proposal then out of the way? So I guess under PECTA's things to do, it would be to shore up that language and maybe look at the meet and confer agreement from last year. And if there's more precise language from the committee language for the 301 or class size committee, we can just move that and then have actual language to say yay or nay to, and wordsmith it if we need to, so we can come to an agreement.
Yeah, could we do that Monday at 3:30? And then that would put us in a position to wordsmith it, whatever we need to, and then hopefully have it ready for our meeting on Thursday.
Yep.
And then would that be a district committee? I believe in the class size committee, we did 3 PECTA members and 3 at-large members. Would we do the same thing with this one?
Yes, we would.
Okay.
Yes, we will. You got me, Chico.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on unless Dana has another question. All right, moving on. Thank you so much, Marnie. And we are gonna move on to Proposition 4, which is caseload sizes, and Miss Nicole Goodwin will be covering this.
Hello. Okay, so since we last met and talked about class size, the board has voted on the performance-based budget packages and voted to fund class size at 100%. So before they voted, we had talked about class size and we had got this response from the district. And so I want to bring up these 2 bullet points. It says if more than one grade level in a school falls far below the minimum ratio of 90% of the approved ratio minus 1 student, administration may not consider acceptable alternatives that would add to the budget capacity of the school. And then the other one says that if a decrease of more than 2% of total student enrollment takes place during a current school, administration may not consider acceptable alternatives that would add to the budgetary capacities of the district. The 2% decrease would be calculated in reference to total district enrollment at the end of the previous school year. So are those 2 bullet points now off the table since the board has voted to fund our class size at 100%?
No, I don't believe so, because I believe what the board did was really they voted to set a PTR number that is consistent with the current class size proposal. And so all they've done is set the pupil to teacher ratio that we're using to calculate FTEs. That the additional alternatives are not part of the class size budget package. In fact, any of these alternatives, if we were to add them, would actually add to the budget package because we would have to fund either an extra teacher or an extra IA in some of these alternatives.
So Nicole, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So Vic, can you clear up the second bullet point for me then? Because so doing the math, Janice isn't here, so sorry, Janice, but doing the math to the best of my ability, a 2% decrease in enrollment would be around 114 kids ish.
Correct.
So is this language saying if you lose 115 kids, no IAs will be hired across the whole district?
Your math's correct. In terms of no IAs, it's not saying that, it's saying it may not happen. It's providing the flexibility to not be beholden to the agreement if we see a decrease in student enrollment at the level of 2%. What we really saw in the class size committee this year is the importance of just context and looking at each one of those situations on its own, trying to make sure we're being consistent across the district and across grade levels, but we're also responding to the very real needs of that grade level.
Okay, the other issue with this is that according to our meet and confer agreement last year, we said that last year we agreed that the class size committee would be established and the committee will ultimately be responsible for developing budget packages for class size for the performance-based budgeting process. Once a proposal is created, it will be presented to PECTA meet and confer team for final approval. If both PECTA and Phoenix Elementary School District 1 are in agreement, it will be submitted to the school board in order to override the current agreement on class size. So we had 7 class size committee meetings this year between August and January, and this proposal was never discussed or presented by the class size committee.
Yeah, I believe that there's ambiguity in that language, and so I can only speak to my participation in the committee. When the class size committee arrived at the need to create budget packages, they created those budget packages, and my assumption was that the PECTA representation and liaisons that are on that committee would be communicating those things back to PECTA. It didn't fall within the confines of meet and confer, in part because of the dates of meet and confer and the dates of performance-based budgeting. But I don't believe that the class size committee operated in any kind of a shadow. Everything they did was in very plain sight. And having been the person who presented the class size proposal to the performance-based budgeting committee, I know PECTA members were in the room, and I met with them even right before that proposal to make sure that I was accurately, adequately, and hopefully persuasively saying the need to keep class size where it was.
Right, and so if we keep class size where it is, this is going to take that apart. This will completely dismantle that. Because as we looked at the numbers throughout the year, we saw at many schools that we had class sizes that were skinny, as you called it, or below our ratio. And we had in the same school other classes that were very large who benefited from the hiring of an IA. And so this portion of your counter proposal, I guess, would completely dismantle that, because you would be hurting those classes with a large class size that has nothing to do with a different class who doesn't have very many kids at all. So, for example, this year at my school in first grade, we had low numbers. So I had 20 to 22 students all year, but in kindergarten, they had 30 students. And so me having 20 students or 22 students has no bearing on the amount of work that that teacher had to do in kindergarten, has no bearing on the amount of attention those students received or the lack of attention that they received. And so I don't see how you could propose to completely dismantle those ratios and hurt teachers who have large class sizes just because somebody else in the school doesn't have as many kids.
I appreciate the concern. We're not seeking to dismantle anything. In fact, we're strengthening it by coming up with a better protocol and process. Again, I'll point to, it says may not. Well, one thing we learned in class size committee is that one size does not fit all. And we don't want to create wide sweeping you musts or must nots. We want that flexibility so that we can really consider things on a case by case basis. In terms of saying that in your example, the larger kindergarten classrooms, while your classroom was relatively small, that those two things have no bearing on each other. Pedagogically, no. Budgetarily, yes. They have quite a bit of bearing on one another. When we are adding to the budget to add that instructional assistant or to add that classroom, that does have bearing on the overall budget that we see out of M&O at the school, and that we certainly see out of M&O at the district level. So again, while on the daily sort of interactions, other than your kids may be passing those kids in the hallway as you're exiting or leaving lunch, in the budget, all of these things are connected. The class size of one classroom absolutely impacts the class size of another when you look at it through the lens of the budget, and that's what this is speaking to.
Right. The reason that PECTA originally proposed this is because we found, of course, that when schools have smaller class sizes, we see that it benefits students. We see that their scores go up, their social and emotional well-being is better. We have teachers who are healthier, who are coming to school more. And that is why we originally proposed this and agreed on it and have the board approve it as well.
Yes, I'm not disagreeing with you on any of those points.
And this is not what we discussed in class size committee at all. So I just don't see how this would be acceptable.
So I'll jump in just a little bit because I was on the class size committee piece too, and I do remember lots of conversations around the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of it. And I will say, anyone who wasn't able to see Vic present in both the PBB part and as well as in front of the board, he actually advocated probably more strongly than I've seen anyone advocate for any package to try and get class size funded at 100%, even without the board having to override the original votes. And the financial cost to maintaining those sizes in and of itself was significant enough that that's what impacted essentially every other program up for consideration. And so I absolutely hear you, Nicole, as far as making sure that our kids are taken care of, that we're not overloading our teachers. I don't think that the intent behind this is negative or mean-spirited or a way to dismantle anything, as much as it's a way to actually protect both the budget and the unique needs of schools. I remember there being several conversations about teachers who said, no, give me a class of 35 rather than a class of 12 that have X, Y, and Z happening within them. And so I read this much more as we recognize that no matter what, the board approved funding at class size at a certain percentage, but really it's at a dollar amount. And so in order to maintain that dollar amount without it then having to impact things like raises or health insurance and all those pieces, there has to be a little bit of wiggle room so that as situations pop up on a case-by-case basis, we're not married to, well, it said 25 and we're at 27, therefore this school gets the consideration instead of this other school that has a truly unique situation happening in third grade. So I read it just more as flexibility rather than an attempt to blindside anyone, because I remember the flexibility being something that came up on the teacher side with different examples, with things that have happened with students and all of that.
Also, I'm hearing.
Sorry about that.
I wasn't in the performance-based budgeting committee, but they said that this is not what was proposed at performance-based budgeting committee either. So if it's not coming from class size committee and it's not coming from performance-based budgeting, then where does it fit in?
It fits in from administration's proposals. If you go to the top of the document, these are administration's proposals. You're correct. This doesn't come from class size committee. This does not come from performance-based budgeting. This comes from the administration. Again, no one is disagreeing about the importance of class size. Class size matters. We know that. I knew that as a teacher. I know that even more as an administrator. Nothing makes me happier than when I can tell a teacher who's struggling with large class sizes, hey, we found you an instructional assistant. They're going to start on Monday. You're going to be very excited with the level of talent that you found. And nothing makes me more excited than recruiting teachers to be through instructional assistant positions just like that. At the same time, we're operating within the confines of that budget. That budget right now is 100% going towards class sizes, or excuse me, going towards the PTRs that we're currently at. And so any additional instructional assistant we would add, any additional teacher that we add would now go beyond the class size budget. And so what this language is simply seeking to do is to say, if we're seeing that our budget is being adversely impacted at a meta level, that we're not losing sight of that when we're looking at things on the more micro level of a particular first grade teacher at a particular school. Again, not that that's not an important person, they're not doing an important job, they're doing the most important job in our school district. We are simply trying to find places where we can make sure we're staying flexible. And where, again, you're going to see in this language, it says may not, doesn't say shall not, doesn't say will not. In terms of the decrease of being 2%, understand the concern that, hey, we lose 2% every year. And to me, that's concerning. If there's another number you'd like to see there, I think that's the purpose and the spirit of Meet and Confer. I'd be more than happy to hear it. But again, these proposals, correct, did not come from class size committee. They're coming from administration, as we're seeking to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible with everything that's happening in the district.
The way that I'm reading it is that, okay, we're looking at a 2% decrease, and then now we're projecting that we're going to lose 500 students. So if we lose 500 students, then we can go crazy with class size and shove kids in everywhere. Oh, well.
I think that's a particular harsh reading of this. If we're losing lots of students, we wouldn't start consolidating classes. I'm very proud that in 2 years as human resources director, one time have we leveled a teacher across campuses. I don't feel that that's what this says at all. What it simply says is at some point we have to make sure we're looking big picture with our class size. There's nothing in the agreement as exists that has this meta view. We're simply trying to introduce something that would do that. If HECTA does not agree to this, that's understandable.
but I would not want to get twisted at all. Our fierce commitment towards making sure not only are Phoenix Elementary teachers among the highest compensated in the county, they also have the best classrooms to work in terms of a physical space, but also in terms of the number of students that they are asked to work with.
Yes, and as a principal, we definitely consider the kids and the placement of children. So we have a lot to consider. Teacher placement, student placement, that is a priority. And so, you know, we don't know for sure who's going to return next school year. So we can also have great plans in place and, you know, 25 in each classroom. But as we know, we don't know, we have high mobility rate and there's a lot to consider. And so we just have to take it one student at a time, and life does happen throughout the course of the year with teachers, with students, with families. So with that being said, caseload class size is not easy, but it is something that we as leaders take very seriously and really think about the kids.
Okay, then we have also here, the next part of this proposal is that we had proposed caseloads this year, for social workers set at 250 to 1, psychologists set at 700 to 1, SLPs 80 to 1. And so then your response was you wanted more information on the calculation of those ratios. And so we got these from the National Association of Social Workers for the social worker number, the National Association of School Psychologists. And we noted that in our district that we're well below these ratios. We just wanted to have a number in place.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Like I said, we wanted to just have more information on how that number was set, because that wasn't indicated in the proposal. You know, it's challenging with things like social workers and psychologists and SLPs. You know, our community bases those things more on sites than on caseloads, because I do believe that better meets the needs of our families and of our communities and our neighborhood schools. We have fierce advocates at all levels of our organization that I mean, it was stunning to me as a new employee, the amount of social workers we have, the amount of work they do. What was not surprising is how well they do it. Our social workers and social workers in general are incredible. But you'd be hard pressed to find another elementary school district that has that level of service for students and families. And so we simply wanted to know where those numbers had come from, and we'll take that into consideration as we continue to craft out this proposal.
Does anybody have any questions?
I guess I do. So just going back to those 2 bullet points and thinking about like, what would the process be, I guess, you know, I'm thinking about, you know, Emerson, who is a very skinny school, and undoubtedly we may have class sizes above some of the ratios simply because we only have 1 teacher at that grade level. But I also know like our middle school is pretty small in comparison to a place like Kenilworth or Edison. And so thinking about what Nicole was saying in terms of how other grades in the school can impact a grade that may be actually in need of some additional help. And I know this says may, you may not, doesn't say shall not or will not, but I guess, you know, what reassurance then I guess do teachers have if they feel like I need help, I need an aide, I need someone here with me. You know, what assurance would we have that I guess it isn't those in the, you know, in the ivory tower making a decision who may not be on the ground level?
You know, Dirk, you could speak to that, because I know that you were waiting for your instructional assistants from the class size committee for a good chunk of the year, where we knew that number was high. We posted the position, and it took some time to finally get somebody in that position. Yeah, what kind of assurances or supports were you providing to teachers just because we approve, yes, you can have instructional assistants, doesn't mean that one falls out of the sky the next day. So yeah, what were some of the things that you did at Capital this year?
Yeah, so we had a number of grade levels that we had. I mean, it was a nice problem to have where we had more students come into the school than we had planned for. So it's a good problem to have. But I know our kindergarten, first grade, third grade, and sixth grade, we were over. And so we worked with HR and said, hey, here's our numbers. We kept, really good data. And HR was very good working with us. And, IAs, they don't grow on trees. So, trying to move them around. And so Vic was able to, work with other schools and say, all right, maybe there's another school that doesn't have that ratio anymore. And so the IA came to our school, and then we had one IA that resigned, and it just so happened that at the time that he resigned, we had a couple kids withdraw, and we were back into, that ratio. And so we were able, as administrators and at the school level, to just try to support those students and those teachers.
And that's also something to keep in mind, when we hire for instructional assistants, or teachers, we want the best of the best. So, we had the opportunity to get an IA for our kinder classrooms, and, we asked similar type of questions that we would a teacher, because for me at Hurd School, I want that IA. I don't want it just an IA. I want someone that's actually going to come into the classroom and support the teacher, not be more work for the teacher. So just being mindful of finding the quality to help support the learning of the students. So again, that's something that, again, I can only speak for myself, is working with HR. We make that phone call. Here's what we're looking for. Here's the climate and the culture of the school and so forth. So it takes a lot of communication. But at the end of the day, we've got to hire the right individuals to support our kids.
And I guess that I obviously agree with all of that, but we might be in a situation where HR just says no. So there is no working to be had, because according to those bullet points, if we lose a certain amount of kids, district office can make a decision to say, well, we're not going to make a decision that impacts the budget at all because we're down 2% or more. And so there is no working, there's just a no, so I guess like that is there, I don't know, is there a way to maybe work with the language so that there's an assurance in there for teachers and for principals, quite frankly, because it's about the school sites too, not just about the teachers who are in the classrooms working with those large class sizes, that just makes it a little less scary. Like when we read those bullet points, it was a little scary to think about that, like, oh, because the entire district, what if you're a school that went up in enrollment and the entire district went down, and district office is telling you, sorry, you're not going to get any additional help because overall for the entire budget, we're below. It's just, a little scary for us.
So I hear what you're saying, Dana, and I'm happy to go back with the team and talk about however it needs to be worked through to craft other language options and that sort of thing. I do want to just put it out there, because so far, hopefully you guys have realized I just put it out there, that if we're looking for a definitive guarantee, then typically guarantees run on the side of not as much in the favor that I think you're going to want it to be. Like if we have to guarantee that no matter what, we will only do this one thing, then that means that it could end up hurting schools more, because now we're limited to, we have this exact amount of money. We adjusted the language to say 10% or 4% or whatever the magical number is. But I don't know, I worry that the guarantee that you're looking for could end up restricting our options for what we could do for schools rather than opening up that flexibility. And I know part of this is going to be relationship building and trust, that if the district says, hey, we're also on the side of teachers, that we then back it up and show you that through our actions and through our decisions. And I know it takes time to build up that trust and that we have some new faces. I just got here. But I think this might be an opportunity also for us to keep in mind as we're negotiating that language, that at some point we're all going to have to assume good intentions on the side of everyone in order to make sure that we can have that flexibility where we need it, rather than limiting what we can guarantee to exactly what we know for sure in this moment, and then frustrating teachers because we made a promise and now there's that one exception and we can't accommodate them.
Well, did you guys think that there was inflexibility with the current language, I guess? You know, were you finding, I guess, maybe in your class size committee, that the current language led to inflexibility in terms of deciding what to do? Or I guess, Vic, you explained it. You basically said like it didn't take into account the larger picture, which is also something that you need to balance. I guess I answered my own question.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I wouldn't say that ever we hit like a period of inflexibility, but we definitely hit places where I felt like our hands were tied a little bit more than we want them to be. I'm thinking specifically about an OC school that had large class size in one grade that was not impacted by OC, but all other grades were, and were small, very small. And so rarely in the HR office do we say no. We say no, but we really put ourselves in a position that we want to make sure that when we say the word no, we have something else there for you. So we're not just playing, referee and saying like that was a foul, but really putting ourselves in the position to be partners with one another, so that we can come up with the next best solution. And so that's the type of flexibility I think we're looking for with this language. In terms of looking for a guarantee against the doomsday scenario that Nicole you painted, look at the numbers. Our class size numbers are attractive when we're on the recruitment trail, without a doubt. And I don't know another district that has a standing committee on class size that takes up this much of a priority for administration. And those are awesome things. Those are things that make me, I love the class size committee meetings. That's one of the highlights of my week, is when that group is coming together. Because it's one of the times where I feel like we're doing a great job of balancing. We don't use spreadsheets to make decisions, but we don't use anecdotes to drive the budget either. And we have to find the happy balance between those two different things. It's in a space like class size committee that does that. So whereas the meet confer language may not have the guarantee that you're looking for, I think past behavior being a predictor of future behavior, you've seen an administration who's moved resources around to make sure that we can accommodate the need to keep class sizes manageable, not have 40 kids in an 8th grade classroom and 35 kids in a kindergarten classroom, and some of the things that we see in other districts.
I think for me, the one piece of language that I guess is confusing for me is I read may not as will not, for sure. When it says it may not do that, I'm reading that as you may not do that. Like it not, I don't know. So maybe that's some language we need to work on too, to make it seem like it's more, like you said, Vic, where you're like, we're not trying to referee it. We're just trying to assess, kind of, you know what I'm saying? So I don't think we're going to get anywhere today on this conversation. So are there any other questions, or do we want to move on to the next topic?
I would just like to input a little here. I think language is very important, and I think sometimes we need to offer our educators and our administration guarantees. From a personal note, I left my last district because the entire year it fluctuated between 35 to 40 kids in my classroom, and I'd never want to return to that personal hell. It stopped me from being a quality educator, and it made me start hating my profession. I love to teach. And that's something we can't do to our educators, because one, if they doomsday scenarios do happen, and we need to guarantee that educator that, hey, we're going to get you help and we're going to get you it fast. Because the one thing educators will do, they will keep going into the classroom. They will keep doing their job. And I feel that all of us take that for granted at times, just how much we will do. And I think offering that guarantee that we will come to your rescue, we will help you, is very important. And again, that's from a personal point.
So I feel that, Chico, the smallest classes I taught when I was in public school were 35 kids. And so I mean, it's what I did my very first year. So it's the only thing I knew. And then I came to Phoenix L and saw how the other half live. And I think it's incredible the opportunities that the teachers have to really get to know the students by having those smaller numbers. As I said, I'm happy to talk and continue this conversation with Vic, with our team, with your team, whatever it takes to work through that language. I have to state one more time that I want to make sure that we're careful in our language to not box people in and to also think about the potential trade-offs. Like if we are able to offer a particular guarantee, then that means that financial resources then now have to be allocated for those doomsday and worst case scenarios, which means that some of the pockets of money that have previously been identified as potential ways that we could solve other various problems would no longer be available pockets of money, because those would need to be in reserves to preserve whatever the guarantee is that we finally land on related to the class size.
And just to touch on something you said, Jay, in terms of like getting somewhere today, in terms of getting to the final, yeah, we're probably not going to get there right now. I understand that. But I still think we get somewhere through this kind of dialogue, because it's helpful to know, again, that presumption of positive intent, and also the function of the way that proposals work. Yes, this didn't come from the class size committee, this came from administration. It didn't come out of administration because we are busily, counting our stacks of money on the backs of 35 kids in the classroom. It simply comes out of trying to put us in the best position to do the most good for the most people at the same time, and making sure that we have the flexibility to do that, and to bring something into the class size agreement that looks at class size at this meta level. Because right now there's nothing in there that does, other than the initial setting of the PTR. We don't have anything in the remedies that zooms back out at that 10,000 foot level, when again, all these things are connected in the budget. And so if by Monday at 3:30, you wanted to send us something else that we could consider and we could bring that back to the table, we would certainly love to do that. If we want to bring this back as an agenda item to continue discussion, we could as well. If we want to set something up offline, we'd be happy to do that as well.
Great, thanks, Vic, I appreciate it.
So just for clarification, we'll just put under our PECTA jobs, either to send back language or to request an offline meeting, or to, I guess, say no. One of those three things can happen by Monday at our deadline. PECTA members, yes.
All right, I want to be mindful of time. We have 10 minutes left. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the welcome back. Dana, do you feel like we can cover this in 10 minutes, or do we want to push this off till next time?
I think so. I think I can be pretty fast about it. I mean, I think we already agreed to the days, the uninterrupted time in the classroom at the beginning of the year. The only part of that proposal that we did not yet have an agreement on was if a teacher has to move classrooms, or if they have to move campuses, that they could be compensated for extra time that it takes to do that. And so I think in the counter proposal that you sent, it was just kind of like, no, we need to talk about this more. So I guess, like, what specific concerns might the district have with offering that to teachers who are in that position?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of concerns. Sometimes those moves are voluntary, and what might prevent a teacher from wanting to change grades or schools every year, knowing that they're going to get a couple extra days of compensation, when our 12-month warehouse employees are the ones who are actually moving their equipment from one school to another. When we do a school-to-school transfer, we make sure that teachers have assistance with packing, but when it comes to the actual moving, we want our custodians in our warehouse doing that. I know that there's stories out there of teachers that maybe hearing that, wait, what are you talking about? I throw that stuff in the back of my car and I drove it, down 7th Street or whatever that might be. But people need to know that we have teams that are in place to do that for teachers. And so, that's one of the concerns of where that's coming from. And then, just it all goes back to money and time, and just the ways in which that we're distributing that equitably. And so I wanted to get some more information just in terms of how prevalent of a problem is this. I definitely know on a meta level, when people change schools, I don't think that the central office, we always know when somebody's changing a classroom relative to a change in grade level. And if we see that that happens quite a bit, I can see how it would. Again, with this skinny schools model we have, when you have that big grade somewhere, as it goes through the pipeline, it widens the pipeline at each. So that third teacher gets out of the third grade, then fourth grade, then fifth grade, then sixth grade. And so there's always going to be some fluctuation in between them. And then in terms of transfers, what we typically do for a transfer from school to school is we provide 3 days released for those teachers. So if if we're doing a leveling and you find out on a Friday you're moving to this other school, you would get Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday to do that move. Typically Monday to pack your classroom, say goodbye. Tuesday to set up the new classroom because we would have moved it for you Monday. Wednesday to get your feet underneath you, and the classroom start on Thursday. I know most principals actually extend that even further in asking, hey, can I keep that sub for another couple days just to do that transition? Very rarely have we said no. And so, like I said, I don't want to create a solution for a problem that I'm not fully aware of, while also recognizing that there's other things we have in place to support teachers when they're involuntarily transferred from one campus to another.
Okay, well, I think we talked about this ahead of time, and I think that we were saying that if it was like something that the district was really hesitant about, that we felt comfortable maybe gathering more information as we move into the next year to determine just how big of a problem it is. Like I said, I bet we probably have more anecdotal information where, I know for a fact, like this year, our music teacher at Emerson was waiting for like carpets or something to be laid. So she couldn't do a lot in her classroom. And so what ends up happening is she has to wait. And then in order for her classroom to be ready for the first day of school, she has to put in time either on the weekend or after hours. And so I agree, maybe we don't want to make decisions on anecdotal information, but maybe PECTA can find a way to get some more data. And maybe this is something that we can look forward to in the future to determine if this is something we want to bring up again, or if we find through the data that it's actually not as big of a problem as we might perceive it at this moment. So
and as you do that, hold us accountable. If it's news to hear that the warehouse team should be assisting you with those moves, that's on us as administrators. Principals should be communicating that. I should be communicating to principals. Our warehouse team are Johnny on the spot whenever it comes to moving stuff for us, and they have the equipment, they have the know-how to do those things. And so, hold us accountable for that to make sure that all teachers are understanding that there are teams here to support you when you're moving.
Okay, so then what we'll do on our end is I'll make sure that in our Monday communication that we give you the final language that we agreed upon for that proposal, and then maybe we'll be able to approve through just email communication to make sure that that language is okay. Okay.
The one thing that I would request on this with the language is that we do put something in there about the potential of school closures in the fall. We can't look into the crystal ball and know exactly what's going to happen, but if we had something in there, because what I would not want to have happen is to have 3 free release days to set up rooms if we're going to continue to do distance learning. And if we're going to do distance learning in a format that actually you need the extra training because we're using a new interface or we're using a new system. So if we see that something significantly shifts in what we thought July was going to look like to what it actually looks like, we probably want to be in a place that we would not be handcuffed by that. At the same time, recognizing that under normal circumstances, this is where we'd want to be. So we wouldn't want to lose that for a future agreement in a future year where we would have the brick and mortar operating capacity. So
okay.
So some kind of language that just puts us in a position to, I don't know if it's bringing it back into meet and confer, that could be one way that we do it. It could go back into the work teams that are being established through the C&I department, as they're looking at different models that our teaching and learning may morph into as we think about next year.
Okay, we'll look at that and see if we can add something. I may reach out to you and just say, hey, can you give me more information about what kind of language you might be looking for if we need it?
Yeah, I mean, we put a lot on your guys' plate from Monday at 3:30, so I think we'd be happy to take that on. Shelman, I'll definitely ask for your help for that if that's okay with you. Just some kind of one sentence clause in case we do find out that distance learning is still the norm.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Dana. We're going to go ahead and quickly move on to Prop 8 CTMs. Jay?
So, hold on, Nicole has a question.
I just wanted to say that the reason we brought this up and proposed this year was because we had heard from many teachers that they had to like pack up for mobile furniture, pack up for new carpet, pack up for different reasons, and stated that they had spent many hours of their own time resetting up their classrooms, like on the weekend or, you know, after hours. And so that's why we originally brought this up.
Yeah, and I actually have the data right here that I would like to share with you guys really quickly. Just give me 1 second to pull it up.
Just to pack and set, you know, it takes a lot of time. Like I had to pack up for mobile furniture and I had over 40 boxes of books, just books. And so it just took a lot of time to do that. Or if you're moving a room to set up a bulletin, bulletins take a lot of time to like put back up and get the sources, make sure everything's nice. So that was where we were coming from with this proposal.
Right, and I also don't want to throw the warehouse folks under. I mean, it's not their fault. You know, I understand people are busy, but also a warehouse person moving all the stuff to the classroom isn't setting up a classroom. It's kind of just getting the bulk things there, which is great, and God bless them. They're essential to our district, but you still have to set everything up. So if you look at this data right here, you know, we asked, 309 people responded. So how many hours would you say you use outside of your contract hours to set up your classroom workload at the beginning of the year? And as you can see, yeah, there are a percentage where it's 1 to 8 hours, but the majority of it, basically 75%, was between 9 and 24 plus hours. So yes, I get it. We can't put a name to a face or a face to it. You know what I mean with these numbers, but this is obviously good data. And this shows that our teachers work their tails off outside of contract hours. And I know you know that, Vic. I'm not saying that you guys don't know that. But it's just something that this is really where it stemmed from, was the amount of hard work that our teachers are putting forward. And that's why at the end of the day, PECTA is really happy that we are getting those 2 days to set up our classrooms this year, where there will be a lot more time. So that's one big victory, I think, for both parties, because teachers are happy. And Vic, I'm guessing like an unofficial slogan of HR is, if teachers are happy, you're happy, right? So but yeah, this is where that data came from. So I just wanted to share that.
And I think that language came just for the rare instances when it does happen. Like last year, the decision for me to switch schools was made like the last school day. So I came in the summer 2 days to pack up, and custodians helped me, and warehouse was amazing because the packed boxes they had to my new school the next day. So those weren't the issues. It was just that because of timing, I spent 2 of my summer days going in to pack up, and packing up takes a lot of time. That's just, again, anecdotal, but I think the language was put in just for those rare occasions that a teacher has to do those kinds of things.
So I'll work on that language and get with you, Vic, about that clause piece. And then I also love Dana's idea about gathering more data this upcoming year. I'm also wondering, with those numbers from the survey from this year, if that's reflective of the typical year, or if it's an outlier year because of all the new furniture that so many schools got at one time. We probably won't be buying new furniture in mass anytime soon since then. And so is this something that will continue to be a problem, or was it even worse than usual, or impacting more teachers than normal because of the cool new flex furniture that we have?
I think another dimension to look at that data with, if we're going to collect more data, is also, is this your first year, or are you a new hire? So it makes sense to me that you're spending a lot more time setting up the classroom if you're new to the school, as opposed to somebody who's returned. So I wonder what the distribution of that might be as it pertains to some of those hours that are beyond.
Any more questions? All right, then we're going to move to Proposition 8, CTMs, Sir Barbudo.
Thanks, Mr. Robinson. So our proposal was that PECTA was asking for 3 days of full day professional development to be added on to the school year. And the 3 days would occur the day after fall break, the day after holiday Christmas break, and the day after spring break. And that we would not have to add them onto the calendar at the end. And the main reason we wanted to do this is because we're professionals and we believe that, especially with all this new curriculum coming out, that we should have the chance to be professional and be leaders of this curriculum. So Dr. Brown, this has kind of been our baby. We've been talking about this for a while now. So I'm gonna give you the floor because that's what we're asking for. So.
Yeah, and I loved that request. I think it was a great opportunity for us to work towards building that good faith and that trust and relationship that we spoke of earlier, so that we realize that we are in partnership with one another. We had a great conversation. Thank you to everyone who was able to give me some input on the teacher side to help us to reach what I think is going to be something that we can move forward with putting into writing that I'll share with Vic and with Jay so that we can officially adopt it however that needs to happen. But the district loves the idea of the 3 PD days, full day PD. And it's my understanding based on conversations that those would be days that were to the maximum extent possible planned by the district to reflect teacher needs related to new curriculum and new instructional resources for those 3 days. What we cannot guarantee is that those 3 days can be absorbed into the calendar only because we can only say that we can recommend it for the board to make that call. And so the district supports moving forward with at least asking the board to absorb those. We have the instructional minutes to be able to do it. I just don't want to mislead anyone by saying that we guarantee something I don't have the authority to guarantee, but the district fully supports moving forward with asking to see whether or not we can just add those after the breaks. And then those days could be tied or will be tied to 301, whatever the 301 package ends up looking like would be reflective of those 3 days of PD. Also related to the district CTMs, as you said, you are professionals, and so we need to have as much ongoing support as possible. Those 3 full days of PD would not be the full extent of PD offered by the CNI team. We'd still have all sorts of ongoing additional things. Those are just the guaranteed ones that we know everyone would have access to because the schedule's already cleared for it. But we would like to keep those recurring semi-monthly. It's mostly monthly, but not exactly every month. Those regular CTM meetings that we have as a district on those early release days, and move towards a slightly more structured approach where we're really looking at data based on common formative assessments. We had talked about my team taking responsibility for identifying those common formative assessments for this first rollout so that teachers would still have time to focus just on learning new resources and new curriculum. And these common formative assessments would be the focus of the conversations at the district CTMs. They would not be the only summative and formative assessments that ever happen in classrooms, because you're going to do that just based on what your site needs, what your kids need. But there would at least be one data point in common that we knew that all teachers who came to a CTM would be able to talk about and learn more about how do I make decisions based on what the data is telling me. So if I'm understanding correctly, what I think we'll all be able to agree to is moving forward with recommending the board modify the calendar. And then if they say no, we'll go back and figure out what we can do and what other options might be for still supporting those 3 days, because we want the PD as well. Continuing our district CTMs, but with a heavy focus on data-driven instruction, with the CNI team owning responsibility for defining protocols for data review, identifying what those CFAs could be, and really just letting teachers focus on learning how to use the data before they have to start creating the district CFAs.
And just to confirm, thank you, by the way. And just to confirm, when you say creating the CFAs, there's a really good chance that it will just be the formative assessments that the new curriculum provides anyways, correct?
Our greatest hope is that because of the robust assessment systems already in place in these resources, our greatest hope is that we'll be able to pull things from already existing assessments within the resources.
And just to clarify, even if that doesn't happen, say it's, I hate to throw it on your shit, but it's your job to figure it out.
That's my problem. It's not no matter how it works, if it turns out that there's nothing for 7th grade social studies that people really want to measure in that moment, then sorry, Amanda, if you're listening, but that's our job. That's our team's passion. That's our team's work. So our promise is that it's a C&I responsibility. We own that, and we're here to support you with that.
And I appreciate you understanding from the beginning that people wanted, change to what Wednesdays look like. And they wanted more serious PD about the actual curriculum in general. So I just appreciate your help with that, Dr. Brown. And I don't know, does anyone here have any clarifying questions, or especially the principals?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there room in there for differentiation in the PDs? Because I heard from Shaw Montessori teachers that when they get the curriculum that the rest of us are using, that they don't approach it at all the same way as the rest of us are, and that those type of PDs might not benefit them.
So I'll give you a yes sort of answer. And the yes sort of comes from, anytime I talk about PD, I talk about the drink from the fire hose type training, where it just comes at you. It's, hey, I got this new, we just got this new math program. What's everything you need to know about what's in it, how you find it, and everybody's in a big old room and it's all just coming at them. And then you go back to your classroom and 2 weeks later, you realize what you don't know or what you actually needed help with. There's not really a way around doing the drink from the fire hose piece, because we all have to have a baseline starting point. Once we know that everyone has at least been given the opportunity for that same foundational piece where everybody learns how to log on and all of those things, I view that as a one-time, everyone has to get the same thing. Beyond that, then we're going to have someone who's completely tech savvy and who has already figured out something. They don't need to go to the training on how to access the tech feature. They need to know more about how do I set up whole group versus small group instruction using this resource. And so I view, and what I've talked to several of you about is having maybe a menu. I don't know what that looks like yet for those full days. And so I don't want to commit to saying that we're going to have 8 different options for math on the 13th. I think we have to sort of take it as we go and see what teachers are saying that they need. So I'm open to having multiple options and to really trying to target it to what teachers need, because otherwise it's not going to get implemented well and nobody wins. Kids don't get what they need. But I don't want to go any further than just saying, yes, I hear you, and I understand that teachers need different things, and I'm hoping that this ongoing partnership with PECTA is going to help us to better identify those needs. If you caught the board meeting, you'll know that I also said in front of the board, so I know they'll hold me to it, that I'm committed to actually reaching out with PECTA as the partners to help us figure out what is it that teachers need to implement these resources well.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Always.
I have one more clarifying question. So I'm assuming here that there's a lot of people watching right now, and there's teachers that have probably been in this district for a while. And Dr. Brown, they're probably thinking, yeah, we've heard this before. It's going to end up just being us sitting around and talking about how we can do this and do that. And it's not, what are you, I know it's like, you can't guarantee anything, but what are you doing to ensure that these are like the highest quality of PDs for our teachers and staff?
I think you're just gonna have to trust me. I think it's one of those things where at the end of the day, it's gonna be my reputation on the line. And so I can't say anything other than I have a wealth of experience. I've been through this before. I've helped to manage it on a much larger scale. I'm coming out of a district with almost 60 schools, 33 elementary schools alone. And we were able to have, these larger scale conversations. We had a slightly stronger PLC model with less emphasis on some of the other pieces. And I've got a team of committed specialists who also want this to work. At the end of the day, over in the ivory towers, we want our kids to succeed as much as the teachers do. It just looks a little bit different what our responsibility for that is. And I think so far this year, I hope that my actions have shown and will continue to show that I'm in it for kids all day, every day, and that I know that teachers are the pathway to get to those kids. So trust me. And then here's the reality. Y'all are going to hold me accountable. If I'm not doing it, somebody's going to call me out. We both know this. So call me out, hold me accountable. But then when we're putting things in place, let's high five and keep running with it.
And
All right. Call you out.
just to follow up, Jay, you made a comment in the beginning. You said we're all professionals. So I think as we continue to journey on with all the instructional resources coming our way, which is really exciting, and all the new learning, when we do attend those PDs, it's all about building capacity, building the next leaders. So we, and I'm gonna include myself in here as a teacher, is that we continue to build one another with, being positive and helping one another make those connections, because we're going to have first year teachers, right? They're just thinking about their classroom and how they're going to set it up, and then we've got teachers that have been doing this 15, 20 years, like, yeah, I got this. But it's up to us as leaders to support one another and keep moving forward and to keep the CTMs strong and alive. And again, it's all about building the next leaders and increasing student achievement.
And if I could offer any assurance to teachers out there, when we did have an opportunity to talk to Dr. Brown, those of us who were on the Meet and Confer team, it was just really positive. And, it was an opportunity for us to be heard, and truly she heard us. And, and for her to give her vision of what she thought was helpful for teachers. And so, the same way Dr. Brown is saying, trust her, I would say, like, trust us as, the Meet and Confer team, because we thought about it a lot and we heard your voices and we wanted to bring your voices to her. And I thought that she was really, really open to what we had to say. And it truly was a collaboration. And so I'm really excited for this proposal, because I feel like it's going to be exactly what we need at this crucial time, where we really try to implement a huge part of that curriculum audit and really try to put that into action to improve our district, improve our scores, improve our instruction. So I'm really excited. And I think that, it was a pleasant experience working with Dr. Brown and having an opportunity to talk to her about what we wanted, but also her vision for what could happen.
Thank you, Dana. I felt like it was a strong collaboration too, and I'm looking forward to more of those. And I also want to say, in case I have some district CTM leaders listening, that we also appreciate you and that your hard work throughout this year was also acknowledged. And so I want to make sure that we're clear that we also do want to continue to build teacher capacity and to make sure that our teachers are able to step into those leadership roles. And we want to make sure that we're fully supporting you in when we ask you to assume those leadership roles as well.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Brown, can I have one small follow-up? I'm sorry. So for the principals, I'm looking out for Anthony here, because Bills fans, they need all they can get. But no, how, as a teacher, that you said yesterday during the meeting, that what grade levels are the ones that are impacted where it's multiple curriculum? It's
I believe it's 4th and 5th if you're not departmentalized, possibly 3rd, but we'll talk about that. I'm still going through some options.
Right. And then a lot of schools are adopting this 95%. Are all the schools adopting the 95%?
I believe most schools that don't already have it are moving towards that. That's an early literacy K3 resource.
Right. So it's fair to say that a lot of teachers, they're going to have a lot on their plates this year in terms of stuff. So what does that look like? Because if I'm sitting there, I'm lucky. I'm just going to be quiet because I get one curriculum and I'm good. So yeah. But what are you going to do for those teachers where it's like, oh God, this is great, we have all this time, but I have to do math, I have to do night, you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, and I won't give you a list of exactly how it's going to look because I don't know yet, because a lot of it's going to depend on what teachers say that they need. I can say that my team is already thinking ahead about things like, okay, well, if we have PD and I'm a 5th grade teacher who teaches math and science, which PD do I pick on that day and how do I learn both of them? And so we're already starting to brainstorm what are some ways we could set this up and how soon can we get information to teachers, because we know we have some go-getters who would love to spend the entire summer digging around and playing around online in the new resource so that they don't feel like they're overwhelmed in August. We have other teachers who are going to say, I'm tired. Do you not realize that I just survived a pandemic? Leave me alone until August or the end of July, whatever the case may be. And so I will say that the best I can promise right now is that we're mindful of what it feels like to be overloaded, and that I'm hoping that we can throw some ideas out for how PD can look and how it can be structured. as part of every resource that we're adopting, especially with the math, because that's, I think, is going to be the biggest lift for many of our teachers. We're already looking at options besides the traditional group PDs and the webinars and that sort of thing. We're looking at how can we get coaches onto your sites to help so that teachers aren't leaving the building, rather than the help is coming directly to their building so that they're not out as much. Those are all the types of considerations that go into my planning, but the specifics of the plan, we're going to work that out. We actually have already reached out to the vendors so that next week we can set up some implementation calls so that we can have some more specifics. You can know before your principals, because I'm putting a note in the principals weekly update to let teachers know about when they can expect. We're hoping to get information on implementation next week so that the following week, by mid-May, sometime before teachers leave, you have a better feel for what's happening next year and what opportunities would be available over the summer so that you're not blindsided by anything when you come back.
Thank you. I appreciate all your clarifications.
If I could just one thing to what we want to do this agreement, because we've been putting a lot of pressure on the governing board here, because it's all on them to adopt this new calendar, is to come up with this sort of plan B, perhaps, should they find themselves in a position that's too late in the game for us to tell families, look, school's going to be closed for these 3 days next year. But they're willing to do it, let's say, the year after. So when we did sick leave bank last year, we put in the agreement that we would do this year so we could have it next year. And so it might be helpful to put somewhere in that agreement that if we do find we're not able to implement it in 2021, we still have the commitment to implement it in 21-22.
Does the language right now address that, or does it say something like the CNI team would work within whatever the board decides? I thought that it might have said that in the language that you said, Shelly, or no?
I don't have it reflected in writing. I think Vic's saying make sure that it's also written in that we're gonna be flexible, that if the board says no, we're committed to then coming up with saying, okay, we'll try that again for 21-22, but then here's what we'll do for 2021 in the interim. And I'm happy to have another conversation with you all about some ideas that we have for a possible plan B. I told you I'd like to have a plan B, a plan C. Either way, the big thing is I really want the PD to be available to our teachers. So I'll make sure the language reflects that. I will send that to Jay and to Vic. And then if you think that we need to have a follow-up call to firm up any of those plan B options, then we can do that. And if not, then we can move forward next Thursday with the language as it ends up being written.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to open it up to any questions. Dr. Brown, thank you so much. That was the end of our agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up one last time for any questions about any of the propositions we talked about today. Okay. Well, thank you so much to the Meet and Confer teams on both sides. We went just about 20 minutes over the time. Appreciate it. I felt that we did some really good work and some talking. Thank you to Dr. Diaz for getting us that counter proposal. We look forward to talking with you guys about this in the future. With that being said, I officially at 4:35 am ending the Meet and Confer meeting. Bye.
And I apologize. I feel like I do this every time, but can we just review what we have for 3:30 so I make sure that we don't forget something?
Oh yeah, yeah.
People need to jump. Totally understand. Dana and I, we're starting to click on this pretty good here. So Monday at 3:30, PEC is going to be sending language about the salary study committee, something to that effect. Monday at 3:30, PEC is going to be sending language or responding to the counter proposal regarding caseloads and class ratios. Monday at 3:30, administration is going to have some kind of a COVID-19 clause for welcome week. Am I missing anything for Monday?
Wait, was Dr. Brown going to also send language about proposal 8 for the contingency if district doesn't approve a change in the calendar?
Yeah, yes, sorry, catch me that I didn't take that last note. And so, yeah, that'll go Monday at 3:30.
All right. Well, thank you again. And